everybody. Welcome back. It is another episode of the Opinionated Musings of Tim and Eric. With us today, we got a special guest. Our old buddy, Dayton Johnson, is here.
Hello.
Dayton, Dayton was the drummer with Eric and I in a band that I think you and I, Dayton, started the band after high school. It was right after high school, I was in Sweet Cheetah with Eric. And then after Cheetah imploded, I moved on to Corsair with you and Tim Burke. That was the other band name. Good remember. And then you and I and Berkeley played together for several years, and then we stopped, I think. And then you and I reconnected in college.
Yep.
And then we started another band, and that went through a litany of lineup changes.
I think that's kind of
probably Eric jumped in with us.
Yeah. I remember. I think I came over to watch you guys practice or something one time over at Dayton's house.
Yeah. Because
it had Paul in the band.
Paul was our bass player with Dayton and I, but Paul was also the bass player in Sweet Cheetah with Eric and I originally. So he invited Eric over to watch one of our practices and kind of critique the originals we were working on. And one thing led to another after that. And I think we had two more lineup changes, and then Eric jumped in.
Yeah.
I don't even remember how many names that band had.
I lost track.
When I was in it, it was The Difference, I think.
Yes.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
That was the last name. And then there was we were Generations for a little while.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Gosh, there was some other name in there that I'm forgetting. I know.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't it at Dayton's house when the singer auditioned, the guy in the van, you and I laughed?
Oh, do you remember this guy?
Oh, yeah.
The dude that pulled up in the white serial killer special van.
And I'm pretty sure we're going to die today.
I do remember.
I remember Eric looking out that window that, because the basement was below ground, and you had the window that could look out into the driveway, and he looked up and he looked back at us and he said, "Boys, I don't think we're making it out of here today."
Yeah. He was a little
That dude was scary.
Yeah.
He was
definitely scary.
And he smoked like 1,000 cigarettes in the 20 minutes he was there. Claimed he had been in, who was it? Jackal? Yes.
I think it was Jackal. Yeah.
He also told us that he played with one of the guys from Megadeth at one point, recorded a track with one of the original guitar players. But
was it Chris Poland?
Yes, Chris Poland. That's right.
Yeah, I think I remember that. Good Lord.
I remember we spent like at least 45 minutes just telling that guy, "We'll let you know. Thanks for coming by." And he just kept sitting there like,
"Yeah.
Well, what'd you think? What'd you decide?"
Nice.
Terrifying. Just terrifying. All right. So do we want to get this list of drummers started?
Sure.
All right.
I think what I did was basically, since this is all subjective anyway, I did the top 5 and an honorable mention of the drummers that basically influenced me back when I was playing drums for a little bit. So
I kind of did my favorites, the guys that I always, when I start thinking about great drummers, the guys that just always jump to mind immediately.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Mine had a little bit of people I wanted to emulate, people that just after I saw them live, it kind of stuck in my head, and it was just like a couple people on here that I think just got forgotten and need to be recognized.
Cool. Cool.
All right. Well, how about we let the today's special guest kick off? We'll go Dayton, Tim, Eric, and we'll just go around the horn.
All right.
Number 5.
Number 5. Jerry Gaskill from King's X.
Good pick. Good pick.
Yeah, I feel that's always a band that was always a musician's band.
Definitely.
Like, whenever you go to the shows, it seemed like it was mostly musicians at the shows. And
you're watching them.
Yeah, right. And just watching Jerry play, he always seemed like he was having fun, and he did things that I'm like, how did he do that? And you're trying to figure it out. And he I just he was so quick with his bass drum and just did everything so easily, and also was able to sing while doing all that too, which I always thought was kind of a challenge. And when you can pull that off, I think that's an awesome thing.
You talked about his bass drum work, and I remember I think you were with us. I think it was you and me, not me and Eric. But we met them outside of a club one night after the show, and we got to talk with Jerry for a little while. And I remember he was just a crack up to talk to. He was a hilarious guy. Really? But I remember talking to him about his bass drum work because he didn't use a double pedal and he only had a single drum. And there were parts, I swear it sounded like he had a double bass going.
Oh, same here. And so that, there are some that can do that. And he just made it look, I thought for sure there had to be double kick pedal down there, but there wasn't. So, and after seeing them, there was that show I saw, it was Extreme and King's X in Westchester. It was a free concert.
Oh, wow.
And that was great. Yeah, it was a great show. That after seeing them again, it just kind of solidified his ability, and unfortunately, just nobody seems to know about the band and about him except for musicians, and that's a shame,
It is. All right. Well, I'm going to kick off my number 5, and it is a guy who I've gained a lot more respect for after watching the documentary Hired Guns, and that is Mr. Billy Joel's drummer, Liberty Valentine.
Nice.
It's funny you say that because I kind of felt the same way when I watched that, and I really disliked Billy Joel more. Once I found out how he kind of treated those guys.
Yeah,
at least it seemed like it.
I feel like there's always two sides to every story, and we're really just getting Liberty's side of it. But it really seems to me like not necessarily in defense, but maybe an excuse that I could see Billy Joel is that it seemed like he had a lot of managers and people kind of whispering in his ears and telling him to do things that maybe weren't the most graceful ways to handle things.
Right.
All right, Eric, you're up.
Over to me. Okay, my number 5 is a guy that I really didn't. It's not that I didn't like him. It's just I didn't really think about him much until I started playing drums, and that's John Bonham. Just because some of the stuff he did when you're trying to learn it, you're like, oh, this is a lot harder than I thought it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
You get into a mindset growing up as a teenager and in your early 20s that the older stuff you hear on the radio was the easier to play music because a lot of bar bands play Zeppelin and AC/DC and Black Sabbath. But there's some depth in there if you really start diving in.
Yeah, I definitely got more into Led Zeppelin the older I got than I did. When we were in a band together, I didn't even really think of Led Zeppelin. Of course, that was the whole hair metal age. So that's all I was worried about. But I definitely like them more now than I used to. So.
Yeah, I just now started actually buying their records. I had you buy a few here and there, but lately it's been like, okay, I'm going to get In Through the Outdoor, and I want it's like I kind of staying away from Led Zeppelin 4 because it seems like that's always the record everybody talks about. But yeah, me too. Later in life, I really started to appreciate more of what they did, and especially John Bonham. Number 4. All right. This was a recent addition. This is just today. Eric Carr.
Wow.
Good pick.
I mostly because filling shoes after Peter Criss left in such an iconic band, I think that's a big challenge. And obviously it was for most of the guitar players because most of the guitar players didn't last too long. They went through a few after that. And honestly, had Eric not passed away, I think he'd still be their drummer today.
Sure. Very likely, yeah.
Yeah, and he changed the sound. He showed up, and I even commented on your Kiss, your top 5 Kiss records, that Creatures of the Night I thought was their best album of the '80s, easily. New sound, and he could also play and sing, which is impressive. He took the songs that Peter had sang and did a great job with them, and he made the position his own, and I think that's tough to do when you're in a band like that everybody was so aware of for so long.
I just remember him always having he was so enthusiastic.
Yeah.
All the time. He seemed like he was always in a great mood.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I was the fact that he passed away stinks, but the same day as Freddie Mercury, as such an icon, it's like nobody even realized that he was gone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Terrible. But anyway, that's my number 4.
All right. Well, my number 4 was actually Dayton's number 5, Jerry Gaskell.
Nice.
I mean, just his work to me filled out so much of their sound, and in a same kind of vein that Neil did with Rush, Jerry does with King's X, because again, it's a 3-piece, and his drumming work to me always felt more almost melodic than rhythmic.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I can see that.
All right, I put the Eric up to number 4.
Okay, this is a guy that, for at least for guys our age, what he's probably most known for is not so much what I liked him in, and that's Greg Bissonette from the David Lee Roth Band.
Okay.
Back when I was playing drums, I got some of his, videos, and killer drummer, a lot better than what you would think he was if you only heard him, on, Eat 'Em and Smile and, albums like that. So, but very, very influential on me when, back when I was drumming.
All right, that puts us up number 3, Dayton.
All right. Well, my number 3 was Eric's 5, John Bonham. He and like I said, I've gained a lot more respect for the band as a whole in recent years, and just being self-taught, and really something I've noticed in recent years is that he really followed Jimmy Page. Like, he matched what Page was playing and what he played, and which is impressive because usually they lay down the beat, and usually it's the bass, it's a rhythm section, they work together. Mm-hmm. If you really listen to it, and what he did with his bass drum too, single drum, no double pedal for him either, but he was literally playing the guitar riff on the drums. Mm-hmm. And that just sometimes, like Immigrant Song, you can just hear it, between the snare and the bass drum, it's like matching Page's notes. It's insane. So yeah,
it makes a good point.
Yeah. And that was just and like I said, initially it's like you almost have to put him on the list, but the more you really start listening to him, it's like, well, yeah, I did a lot of research looking at other people's lists and whatever, and he's usually number 1 and number 2, and yeah, 10 years ago, he might not have made my top 5, but definitely now.
All right, my number 3 is Alex Van Halen.
I was wondering when he was going to hop on your list.
Well, you know me, the big Van Halen Kool-Aid drinking fan that I am. But really, I think Alex added a lot to the sound that tends to get overshadowed because of the Eddie fandom, of which I wholeheartedly am a part of. Don't get me wrong. But he really does add a very distinct sound to the band with his drumming. I mean, his snare drum, love it or hate it, it's him immediately, just from that first opening crack.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He definitely kept up with Big Brother. He definitely had to. I mean, it's like everybody thinks about Eddie, but yeah, Alex was definitely his own musician. He really was.
All right, me.
Yep.
Stuart Copeland from The Police.
Interesting
guy.
That's a great choice.
Another guy that I didn't really think much about until I started playing drums, and then there was a phase where I listened to The Police a ton, just because of him. And
that's interesting that you picked him, because that's somebody that I wouldn't have necessarily pegged you as a big fan of.
Copeland, I think one of the things that kind of turned me on to him at first was reading about how much of a huge fan of his that Neil was. And I thought, well, if Neil likes this guy, I got to check him out, because he must be
right.
Good. And I think he's like, drummers and musicians, I think, know how good he is, but normal person probably doesn't realize, how good Copeland is. He's very, very good.
All right, number 2.
Right. Yes, sir.
All right. I had to put him on here, Mike Portnoy. I've been a Dream Theater fan since their first album. And I remember we were actually in a record store out in Springdale, and they were playing the first album, in the store. And I just kind of stopped and was like, okay, who is this? And my initial reaction to the drums was like, he sounds like he's trying to be Neil Peart. And
Yeah.
sorry, Peart. And if that was my first reaction, of course, then you hear the keyboards and guitar and everything. And I'm like, okay, this is pretty awesome. And I might be in the minority on this, but I actually think him leaving Dream Theater, a band he founded, was probably the best thing for both him and the band. Because
for him, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I think since he's left, I think their records have improved. Not that the ones before that were bad, but I think I think he's brought more to music since he left than him being there. I mean, was it Winery Dogs and Sons of Apollo, Flying Colors, Adrenaline Mob? I mean, he's doing something all the time. And I don't know how the guy even has time to watch movies, because he even posts he posted top 20 movies from last year. He's just, he's always doing something. And he's still really a great drummer too. So that's my number 2.
All right. Well, let's just keep the Mike Portnoy conversation going, because he's my number 2 also. But I'm going to kind of disagree with you a little bit, Dayton. I agree about Portnoy leaving the band, but I don't necessarily think it's helped Dream Theater in that regard.
I'm with you.
The 3 albums since he left, the only one I've really cared for has been the self-titled one. I thought that one had a lot of good songs on it.
Yeah.
But that first album right after he left, Dramatic Turn of Events, I thought, to me, and I've said this over and over again, that album to me just felt like Dream Theater paint by numbers. And it just felt pretty lifeless to me. It really feels like that was the point where after replaced him, Mike Mangini, yes. When he stepped in, that he really hadn't found his place at all in the band yet. And I think it definitely showed that there was a gap there.
Yeah, I could see that. I kind of felt the couple albums before he left, I thought were pretty flat. Like, Systematic Chaos. There's some really good songs and there's some really bad songs.
I'll agree with you there, yeah.
So I think I kind of felt, with the exception of The Astonishing, which I still kind of liked, I mean, I do agree the self-titled album is great, but the new one, I really like too. And, I think definitely after Dramatic Turn of Events, I do feel that Mangini found his place. And you can tell. You're right. You can definitely tell.
Yeah.
But, it's also...
And you're right, too, about the last couple before Portnoy left. I think you can kind of see that decline in his enthusiasm for... Right. Doing the band. And he's talked about several times how he was really getting burnt out on doing Dream Theater. Not that he didn't still love the band, he wanted a break. He had other opportunities that he wanted to pursue, and his heart just wasn't in it anymore.
Well, my number 2 is gonna totally come out of left field now. It's Mike Portnoy. And just basically, what you guys just touched on, I totally agree with that. Images and Words, and the next couple albums after that were fantastic, and then they kind of went like this. And I remember, and I don't think it was you, Tim. It might have been Paul DeZay, or it might have been somebody else. But we were at Everybody's Records. We used to go there.
Oh yeah.
Just going through CDs, and I remember seeing Images and Words. And just kind of looking at it, it was used, and I thought, just looking at the cover, I thought, this looks, and it was like $2.99 or something like that. So I said, wow. I'm going to give this a flyer, and I think it was Paul, that got home and listened to it, and I was like, oh my God, this is my new favorite band now.
Oh man, that was like the revelation of music there in 1992.
Yeah. Goodness. I mean, I'm sure I would have heard them eventually, later that summer probably, but just to think that I just go off the cover and looking at titles of the songs, and I was just thinking, I bet this is like good prog. You know what I mean? So I went ahead and
you were right.
It just blew me away. So all the things you guys touched on. I think I love Flying Colors. His work with Neil Morse.
I've recently started getting into Flying Colors. I hadn't listened to them much, but I have started listening to them more lately. And wow, a lot of good stuff there. All right. Well, I guess that puts us up to honorable mentions.
All right. My honorable mention. This was very difficult because, like I said, there's a lot of people that I got cut from the list.
Mine changed at least 3 times.
Yeah. Now this one will come out of left field. Truly, I'm picking.
Mike Portnoy?
No, right. I'm picking Gene Hoglan from Testament. He has a reputation. He's also played with Deathlock, Dark Angel, Death, a lot of speed metal, a lot of thrash metal, and he actually has the nickname the Atomic Clock and the Human Drum Machine, because even at those with all those changes and the heavy bass and everything else, he still manages to keep a solid beat the entire time. Now, the reason he makes my list, a few years ago, I went to go see Anthrax and Testament down in Bogarts. And for whatever reason, Charlie Benanti was out of town. He had family emergency or something. So Hoagland sat in for him. So keep in mind, they were co-headlining, so they both had the same amount of time playing. So he comes out, does a 90-minute set with Anthrax, takes a break, well, they reset, and he comes back out and does a 90-minute set with Testament. I was blown away. 3 hours at that pace, you've got to be kidding me.
There just have been like an IV drip backstage of like pure adrenaline and somebody squeezing the bag going, get him out there, get him out there. All right, my honorable mention, because I can't seem to get through any kind of a list without putting some mention of Cheap Trick on here, is Bun E. Carlos.
That's out of left field too.
That is a little out of left field, but he's again one of those drummers that to me almost felt more like a guy who was trying to add to the melodic content of the songs rather than the rhythmic content. He really played a lot of just like very melodic feeling stuff, even stuff like listen on the live album at Budokan, the intro, that build up that he does before Chubby Checker. What's the song?
Ain't That a Shame?
Ain't That a Shame? God,
all right, okay.
Just like as soon as I went to say it, it like left my brain. But yeah, listen to that, and it's a very boom, 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 very rhythmic kind of beat. But the fills he's putting in have just such a great melody to them, and then they launch into that song. And I think he's a guy that gets overlooked a lot, as much as anybody in Cheap Trick gets overlooked on lists. That he really deserves to be in there.
My honorable mention is Dave Weckl, and he's more of like a fusion, drummer. And I remember having his videos when I was young and just watching them and thinking, if I can learn anything from this guy to put into my drumming, I'd be amazed. He's just one of those guys that is just a phenomenal drummer that most guys will never reach, that peak. And actually he just did a thing at Sweetwater. They had their Gear Fest like online this year because of COVID and all that stuff. And he, other than looking a little older because his hair is a little more gray, he's still in great shape and he still plays exactly like he did, back in the 90s, when I got into him. So I'm not even sure if you guys even know him, but very, very good fusion drummer.
I've heard the name from time to time, but I honestly, I hadn't really listened to him at all. So cool pick.
Got me beat on that one.
All right, well, I guess that brings us all up to the number ones. What do you got, Dayton?
Well, no surprise. The professor himself, Neil Peart, of course. I mean, you can't do a drum list without putting him on there. It's like it'd be, you might as well just go straight to hell for not putting him there.
Who is this? Who is?
Well, I mean,
I'm not familiar.
We talked about this on email before we recorded this. I actually thought about maybe imposing a no Neil rule on the list just to make us break out of that habit and see, kind of put him in the understood number one slot and then see who everybody else would be. But
I wouldn't be on here.
Yeah. Eric's head would have exploded. As soon as I even mentioned that, I saw like there was a little vein on his if you look right above his eyeglass there, kind of throbbed a little bit.
Modern Drummer Magazine actually laid some honor on him too, because he would win every year in all the polls so much that they eventually basically kind of what you said. Basically, he said, okay, Neil's the best. He's not eligible anymore. Right. Him in like the Hall of Fame to vote for somebody else. They actually did that, and I thought that was kind of funny. But
right,
well, as good as he was, he wasn't happy with how good he was. Right. He was always very humble. He knew, but he even continued somewhere in the mid '90s. I remember hearing that he was actually, I remember the guy's name, but he was learning from somebody else.
Freddie Gruber.
Yeah, that's right.
Freddie Gruber.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. To pick up different styles.
Relearned from the ground up.
Yeah.
I mean, who does that?
Yeah, and that says a lot about who he was, and and even just his lyricist, his lyrics and what he brought to the band. I mean, he, when you are a three-piece like that, everybody needs to contribute, and he did so much. And the world is a little bit darker now that he's gone.
Sure. Yeah, every time I think about it, the line from Nobody's Hero comes into my mind.
Yeah.
When I heard that he was gone, I felt the shadow cross my heart.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is July now. He died back in January. Still messes me up when I just sit there.
Yeah, it's still rough. It's still rough. If I go back and watch an old video or something like that,
I just watched Time Stands Still, the documentary, again, like last week or week before, and by the end of it, I'm just like, okay, I'm done. I'm gonna be a mess for about an hour now.
What's the one? Is it behind the one where at the end they go to dinner?
Yeah.
Is that the one where they go to dinner at the end?
Yeah, that's in Beyond the Lighted
I watch that scene like once a month. It's just it's so cool to see guys that have been together for that long still enjoying each other's company.
Yeah. And you could tell they really did. Like, that was not an act. Well, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that's mine and Eric's as well. So, anybody got anything else you want to say about Neil?
Just wait now. That might not
just
be
wait.
A lot of good drummers out there.
All right, Eric. Who is it? Who could it possibly be?
Ricky Rocket. No, it's Neil, of course.
We're done.
I think anybody that is into rock drumming, honestly, and maybe this is me, I think Neil's the best drummer of all time. Now, Neil would be the first one to say, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
But as far as rock music,
it's the one instance, though, where he was wrong.
Yeah, right. I mean, say what you, I mean, if you say he's not the best rock drummer, you're just lying. But he's definitely the best rock drummer, but like I said, in my eyes, he's the best drummer of all time. All genres. But I'm a big Rush fan, a big Neil fan. He's definitely the best rock drummer of all time.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody's really ever going to get there either. So
it's funny when I was looking up all kinds of lists and everything else. A lot of times he was not number one. He was number two, sometimes number three. I mean, Bonham was number one a lot, which I can see that argument. But yeah, I agree. I think rock drummer, he's definitely number one, no doubt.
But if you ask the average music fan, not a musician, somebody who hasn't played, and they may not have known even who Neil was. Yeah. They'd never heard of him before. But the most telling thing you could say to them was, think of whoever your favorite drummer is. Think of whatever your favorite band is, and ask the drummer in that band who his favorite drummer was.
Yeah.
And it was going to be Neil.
In their top three, at least.
Yeah.
Every time. Everybody's top three, at least.
So,
I mean, we could redo the list next week and have 5 different drummers, easy.
Probably.
Well, I could have 4.
4.
Good.
Well, 5 if you do the honorable mention.
Okay,
right.
Sure, I give you that. Well, I think it's funny. Our 2 and our 1s were exactly the same. So,
exactly.
I mean, it makes sense. We're
Dayton and I both had Jerry Gaskell in there too, so.
Yeah, that was a little surprising.
Yeah.
I knew there was going to be some overlap. I'm kind of surprised that there was that much overlap.
I can't believe I forgot Bunny Carlos.
All right, well, that wraps up our top 5 drummers. Well, I guess at this point it's top 15, 18 if you add in honorable mentions. But Dayton, we had a ton of fun having you on the show. We hope you'll come back and do this with us at least from time to time.
Absolutely. Let me know. I'll be glad to do it.
All right. And if you guys want to sound off about your drummers down in the comments, please do so. Like and subscribe on Eric's channel and come over to my channel. And I think Dayton's going to get a channel started here soon too. So
hopefully
just join us and we'll see you guys around the net.
See you, everybody.
crap, we picked like all the same guys.
They're in that same brain.
Right. Maybe throw something at each other. Bottles of Metamucil or something.